Minister of Defense. We'll begin with our first panelist, Dr. Newcomb.
Thank you, Chairman Payne, Ranking Member Smith, members of the committee, for inviting me to testify at this critically important moment for the people of Sudan. Before I begin my remarks, I wanted to ask that my full written statement be made a part of the record, if you wouldn't mind.
Without objection.
I'd also like to bring greetings, Mr. Chairman, from Pam Omidyar. You've met with her several times, and she's disappointed to not be with you today, but was traveling and was not able to make it. But you've been an inspiration to her and to all of our philanthropic work, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let me first commend the committee for holding this hearing. As you know, Mr. Chairman, there's never been a more critical time in Sudan's history than the present. How the parties in Sudan and those in the international community use the next 18 months may make the difference between a hard-won peace or a return to large-scale war. Humanity United, the organization that I run, was founded in 2005 on a simple premise. More than just representing the challenge to peace and security, we believe that egregious forms of violence and injustice, including those taking place in Sudan, threaten the very foundation of our common humanity. As a private and philanthropic organization whose mission is to help end mass atrocities and modern-day slavery, our work on Sudan includes supporting advocacy efforts globally, providing grants to those working to advance peace, as well as engaging in a range of other activities focused on conflict, both inside and outside of Sudan. But as requested by the committee, I will focus my remarks today specifically on how the U.S. can support conflict resolution in Sudan by working with marginalized communities in the country and concentrating on the issues that the various parties within Sudan need to be resolving now at this moment in time. It's clear that the U.S. and international attention is focused on resolving the immediate issues. These issues are important, and yet settling them will address only some parts of the complex mosaic of center-periphery conflict in Sudan. Several high-risk flashpoints will still threaten a return to conflict. Time and energy should be devoted now to identifying such potential flashpoints and to promoting peace-building activities meant to reduce those local tensions which could trigger a wider conflict. Central to these discussions are the transitional areas of southern Kordofan, Blue Nile, and Abyei, the so-called three areas, regions along the north-south border that fought with the Sudan People's Liberation Army during the Civil War. The U.S.-backed 2005 Comprehensive Peace Agreement contains separate protocols for these fragile and high-risk areas, including establishing a parallel referendum for Abyei and a popular consultation process for the states of southern Kordofan and Blue Nile, both of which will remain in northern Sudan beyond 2011. These processes are meant to allow local communities to express their views on the CPA and to enter into discussions with Khartoum on persisting grievances. While the popular consultations in southern Kordofan and Blue Nile represent a potentially important step toward an inclusive governance arrangement, little has been done to prepare for the consultations thus far. Abyei itself is a microcosm of the issues facing both North and South with regard to the 2011 referendum. Abyei, as you know, sits on large deposits of oil, includes traditional grazing areas for northern pastoralist communities, and was the scene of the most serious post-CPA violence to date. As you know, in May 2008, local tensions fueled by failure to implement the CPA led to violent clashes between government forces from the north and south, leading to widespread destruction and many deaths. I think the Abyei incident underscores the case with which a local conflict could trigger a broader war between north and south, collapsing the CPA altogether, and with it, any hope at all for peace. Work with the local communities in Abyei to prevent precisely this kind of violence has lagged dangerously behind other efforts. As the country that drafted the Abyei Protocol, the United States has a special responsibility here to ensure that agreements for Abyei are not just upheld, but that they are successful. The need for local civil society engagement and empower are also dire in Darfur itself, as you know. As the member of the committee knows all too well, the terrible suffering in Darfur has led to displacement and fragmentation, with millions of Darfuris either in refugee camps in Chad or displaced from their homes. Sudan today boasts more displaced persons than any nation on earth. Efforts to negotiate a Darfur peace deal have left critical local voices out of the process, making consensus among refugees and internally displaced persons outside of any part of that peace process. If we believe that we can achieve peace there, this can only be achieved if we help support and sustain the civil society actors that exist in Darfur and help give them a voice in this critical process. Mr. Chairman, before I conclude, I do want to raise the critical importance of thinking today about the challenges of tomorrow. Working for peace in Sudan must also remain focused on the 2011 referendum. If the choice for Southern independence, I think everybody would agree that all indications suggest that it might lead towards independence, there are a number of issues that demand urgent attention. The risk of conflict, I believe, can be reduced, but in order for peace to prevail, international attention, coordination, and diligence by the United States government is needed on 4 pressing issues. The first, cross-border oil revenue sharing. Southern oil revenues is currently split 50-50 between Khartoum and Juba. Should the South vote for secession, the bulk of the oil would remain in the South, but the pipeline to Port Sudan, the only means for the North to get their oil to market, runs through the North. North-South cooperation in the oil sector will require international support, guarantees, and capacity building in the South. Number 2, cross-border population movements. As mentioned in my previous comments on Abyei, there are populations on both sides of the border whose livelihoods depend on continued cross-border access, either for grazing herds or for trade. Early agreement on continued cross-border access will reduce the likelihood of tensions, local violence, and manipulation by outside forces. Number 3, water rights. Flows through the South before meeting with the Blue Nile at Khartoum and flowing north to Egypt. Regional concerns about the implications of Southern independence for the Nile River Treaty need to be addressed. Such discussions will also require robust international engagement to ensure that neighboring countries are confident in this outcome. And number 4, status of the southern populations in the North. I think one of the most worrying scenarios around the secession of the South is the status of southern populations in the North, estimated to be between 1.5 to 2 million people. Most were displaced during the decades-long Civil War and would be forcefully displaced back to the South or may be subjected to violence. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Smith, members of the committee, these are complex and delicate issues, yet we ignore these issues raised here at the peril of the Sudanese people and all those who care about the advancement of peace. Serious work must commence on these 4 issues right away. I urge each of you to push the administration to address these issues and to make sure that continued congressional oversight is exercised as the 2011 referendum approaches. Thank you again for allowing me to appear today, and I look forward to addressing your questions. Thank you.